Hey y'all, Rob here with ATX Legal, and today I'm going to talk about how much do criminal attorneys cost. And of course, I'm going to give you that attorney answer, it depends, but stick around to the end of the video and I will talk about some specific numbers that relate to my own fees. And keep in mind that none of this is legal advice. It's all for educational purposes only. But if you would like to discuss your specific legal issues, there's a contact form listed in the description below. Now, of course, it's no secret that there's a wide variety of answers here. An attorney representing Donald Trump in an election fraud case is going to charge a different rate than a misdemeanor DWI in Travis County. But today I'll just go into some of the factors that go into setting those rates and discuss the rates that I'm more familiar with, which is the misdemeanors and felonies in state court, especially in Travis County, Williamson and Hayes too, and the surrounding areas. Now, there are two main ways that attorneys get paid. There's actually three, but we're not going to be discussing court-appointed attorneys or public defenders today. Today, we're really just going to be talking about flat fees and an hourly rate. Now, an hourly rate is pretty self-explanatory. An attorney keeps track of his hours that he's working on for the case and bills the client every so often, whether that's monthly or however they handle it in their contract. Now, usually the client's responsible for maintaining a retainer, so they pay essentially an advance on that fee that the attorney would keep in what's called an IOLTA account. That's a trust account where he holds on to client fees. And as the attorney puts in more hours, he can pull the funds from that retainer. And if that retainer gets too low, he can ask the client to refill that retainer. Now, a typical hourly rate for an attorney is between $300 and $500 an hour. I charge between $350 and $400 when I use hourly rates. However, I don't typically use hourly rates in my practice. I don't like keeping track of the time. I don't like the extra administrative expense. And I also like to quote fees for my clients and allow them to rest assured that that's going to be the fee. It's not going to balloon way higher than that if the case drags on and on and on. Now, a flat fee is just that. It's a fee that I quote at the beginning of representation, and that fee is it. That's all you will pay. If the case goes on for 2-3 years, you're still only paying that flat fee. Now, the flat fee is divided into two stages. There's all of the representation leading up to trial, and then there is another additional fee for trial. Most cases do not go to trial, so you would not be needing to pay that additional trial fee. But as we get closer and as the case does get scheduled for trial, that's when I might go to my client and say, look, we're approaching trial. It's time to decide whether we're going to trial, and you can pay that trial fee at that time. Now, there are a number of factors that go into how I set my fees. The first factor is going to be simply, is it a felony or a misdemeanor? A misdemeanor happens in county court. There's typically no jail time on the line. They're simply easier cases to handle than most felonies. Next is the type of charge. So if someone's charged with simple possession of marijuana or possession of other drugs, that could be potentially a lower fee than a more serious charge or something that involves violence. Same thing with petty theft. If there's a very low amount that was stolen or a theft by check, those cases can be a little bit easier to deal with than other cases. Next is the criminal history and the facts of the case. If a person has a criminal history, that can make the case harder to deal with. And certain facts that I can read before I take the case on are going to make the case more difficult. Not all assaults are the same, not all DWIs are the same, and there are certain factors that would tend to increase the fees. For example, if a DWI included an accident, or if the BAC was up over 0.15, bumping it up to a Class A misdemeanor, both of those things are going to be treated differently than the less serious charges, even though they're the same charge. It's still a DWI, it's still a misdemeanor, but it's just treated differently by the prosecutors. And lastly, the jurisdiction. Now, I typically only handle cases in 3 jurisdictions. There's Travis County, where Austin is, there's Williamson County, and Hayes. And I will charge a higher fee in Williamson County and Hayes. Now, I don't think it's necessarily fair that if you got arrested over one imaginary line or the other side of that imaginary line, that it should make a difference. But practically speaking and pragmatically speaking, it does. I'm going to be spending more time in either Williamson or Hayes dealing with the issue. There's going to be more in-person court dates, and those cases are just going to drag along a little bit longer than Travis County cases. And for that reason, I do raise my flat fees for those counties. Now, I promised to talk about how much my fees are and use some specific numbers. I want to give the caveat that this is for 2023 in August. The fees do change based on inflation and other factors. And I do want to say that I offer payment plans. Typically, when I'm taking on a case, I'll get $2,000 up front, and the rest can be put on payments, whether those are $300, $400, or $500 a month. We'll talk about that. with the client. But for misdemeanor DWIs, my typical charge is going to be $6,000, and that's the same for assault, family violence. For misdemeanor drug possession, that fee is less. It'll be in the neighborhood of $4,000, same with a low amount of theft or a theft by check. Now for felonies, you're looking at $6,000 and up. So a $6,000 felony would look like a possession of a controlled substance. Higher than that would be an assault, for example, assault impeding breath, or a family violence assault after previous convictions of family violence, where the new assault is automatically bumped up to a felony. You're looking at $7,000 and higher, just depending on the individual factors of that specific case. If you're already on probation or parole for another case, that could also raise the flat fee, and typically I'm going to want to handle the case for which you're on probation for, or if you have a parole hearing coming up, I'll want to handle that as well, because it's actually more difficult to just coordinate with other attorneys than it is for me to just say, I'm going to take that case on as well, but that does result in a higher fee. Now, lastly, I'm just going to leave you with one final question, and that is it really worth it? Is it worth it to go hire an attorney? Maybe you're granted a court-appointed attorney. And that's a question that you're going to have to answer for yourself. But in my opinion, a lot of times, if you're facing jail time or significant consequences for your charge, you're going to want to put on the absolute best defense you can. And sometimes when you have a court-appointed attorney and they have such a huge caseload, you're not really getting the care that you deserve for your case, given the gravity of it and the impact it can have in your life. So that's a question that only you can answer. But if you do want to have a no-cost consultation and just talk about that question and other things about your case, you can give us a call, or you can visit us at atx.legal. There's a contact form listed in the description below.